Hey folks, this is Lucid, and I'm going to be doing a national overview for Late Age Man. This is for the upcoming tournament, where I will be playing Late Age Man. God rest my soul. I hope I don't embarrass myself, but I'm very suspicious that I will. This was not my first choice for playing in the Late Age. This was, like, deep down on my list. But it is a nation I've been meaning to play. I think it's really cool. I was wanting to play it. I just kind of didn't want to play it in the tournament. Because I kind of don't want to get eliminated, and I'm not very comfortable. I haven't played them before. There's a bunch of reasons, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, the nation. What is man? That is a deep question. Late Age Man is a nation with lots of air, earth, and astral magic. I don't know if that answers the existential question of what is man, but it's the best we can do right now. This mage right here, the Magister Arcane, is kind of the focus piece of the nation. He gets Air 2, which is just a great path. He's got Earth, which means summon Earth power. He's got Astral, which means power the spheres. Potentially, right, to attach to a communion. First of all, they can be arbitrarily high-level mages just from the communion, but I mean, you could even just sacrifice some communion slaves to get it where all these guys can kind of get a few of their early spells off, and then just like they're going to die, like just 2 communion slaves. You could get these guys up to being... You push power of the spheres on them, fatigue out all the communion slaves, right? Then you do summon earth power. At this point, they're going to be Air 3, Earth 3, and Astral 2. Then, let's say we have Storm up and we do summon Storm power. We're going to be Air 4 at that point. I can potentially have all my mages Air 4. Air 4 is a very high magic path. I'm not suggesting you should do the sacrifice thing where you sacrifice your communion slaves. Because anytime you get gym baited, you're going to lose all your communion slaves. But you can. You definitely can. Or you can just do like a normal communion, and you're doing mostly on-path magic casting. You can be very, very strong in this. Yeah. There's other ways to do it too, so you end up having very favorable communions with these guys, where the slaves end up having higher magic paths than most of the masters. And that's for like a very sustainable communion. So it's kind of the opposite. You can kind of go either way, or you can do it right in the middle. But, yeah, I mean, the summon earth power is huge because you're going to get really, you know, that beautiful fatigue reduction. They're old, which kind of sucks, but we can't have everything, can we? But if somebody puts Well of Misery up, I mean, Burden of Time up, you are going to be in some dear trouble. Okay, that's the Magister Arcane. Otherwise, he's a Mundane Researcher, which means he... yeah, it doesn't get affected by drain scales. But super good mage. A little people hate on it because it's vulnerable to magic duel. And 170 is pretty expensive, and there's definitely some units in the late age which can trade with it. But it's not like a 300 gold mage or something like that, you know. You don't want this guy trading magic duels with like a 50 gold mage, but there's not a lot of nations with 50 gold astral mages. And there's some, but... You know, a lot of the nations are going to have like 100, 120 gold astral mage that they'll trade with. Which you don't really want to do that either, but it's not such a great deal for them that you can expect it all the time. The Magister Arcane. All right. That is kind of like the magic paths. Oh, they do get randoms that are important. 20 or 50% of the time they'll have a random, so a lot of the time. And that means you're going to get fire. You'll also get some Air 3s, which are pretty important. You'll get Earth 2s, which is important for making boots. Which gets you all the way up to Earth 3 with the boots, and then Earth 4 with summon Earth power. Power the spheres. I mean, not power the spheres. The Astral is pretty nice for getting your Astral gear. So I would say that's pretty darn important. These randoms. We also have the Magister, who has a 50% chance of getting all these. Notably, he's also a Mason. So he can build stuff. He also gets siege bonus and siege defense, which is pretty cool. And he's a spy. And they can all research, even if they don't get the thing, I think. Where's my judge? Yeah. So all your Magisters can research, even if they don't get their little randoms. But most of them are going to get a random. So yeah, these guys, Magisters are pretty solid, I think. You know, like the ones that don't have any paths, you can just send them around to be spies, or you can send them around to, like, you know, defend forts or siege down enemy forts. You should never have trouble sieging as late-age man. We then get the Bishop. Bishop, Holy 2, also old. We get the Master of Theology, Inquisitor, which means works like a Holy 2 kind of in enemy dominion in terms of preaching. 60 gold, pretty budget. Then we get the Judge. The Judge, kind of interesting. Patrol bonus 20, which means you can really keep the unrest down in your empire. I actually kind of like these guys for expansion, because one of the things people don't really appreciate is the unrest you get after initial expansion is pretty significant. Significant enough that it can be worth it to do 10 PD just to start burning down unrest. To like make sure you're spreading Dominion, which also helps with unrest, into provinces that they're going to have unrest from expansion. These guys knock out unrest real fast. And if you roll some of these in the beginning of the game that don't have any of the randoms, you have a 25% chance for fire or death. They do a very good job getting rid of the unrest. They're also going to do a good job getting enemy scouts out of your lands. And if you're not going to make any scouts yourself, always good to kill the enemy scouts. Kappa 1, 2, 3. This also is your only death access, and it's important because you have a special spell where you can summon basically a death air mage, but you're going to need to be death 1. But death 1 is enough to break you pretty deep into death in terms of just gem income, because you can cast Dark Knowledge. So pretty important. You can also throw these guys into communions with like a matrix. And then we're going to go to the Lord Warden. These guys are interesting. They're stealthy. And they're combat casters, which doesn't matter so much, but they're holy ones, and they have a big freaking greatsword, and they have a crossbow, and they have good armor. And they have a corollary, the Warden. And this is your sacred unit. It's cap only. If these were recruited anywhere, you could probably build a strategy around them. As cap only, they're more niche, right? You're in an era of crossbows. They have good armor, but not good enough to like survive crossbow fire, right? Not much of it anyway. You know, they are good in melee, but they're also going to take some hits. They're just a good unit, but they're not like amazing. Now, if you gave them a crazy bless, they would be amazing, but then I think you'd be shortchanging parts of the nation. But they have this big two-handed sword they smack people with, and so they're pretty solid. I like them. Stealthy is also pretty clutch, because that's not what most people think of with man, is like, oh shit, we're going to deal with stealthy raiders. But it's totally something they can do. And then we have the Tower Knight. I've skipped some of the commanders here. We got the Forester too. He's also stealthy, also has a patrol bonus. I don't think the Forester unit here, if I can find him. Oh, he does have a patrol bonus too. Okay, how about that? So yeah, man's actually got really good patrolling. We also have the Tower Knight. These are recruit anywhere, if I recall, whereas these are cap only. Yeah, the Tower Knight, it's just a solid heavy cav, big lance charge, broadsword, hoof, pretty damn good armor, good shield, going to do pretty well against crossbows, but in close range with heavy fire, they will go down to them. These are options for expansion. You can expand with quite a few units here. You can expand with Tower Knights, you can expand with Warden, you can expand with Defenders, and you can expand with Tower Guard. You might even be able to also expand with some of these crappier units. I haven't really tested it, though I probably should. Especially to just about beefing up that first party. Yeah, we'll have to see. I do kind of like the Warden, though. The Warden expansion is kind of what I'm leaning towards right now. If you go full scales and have no bless, Defender are really good at expanding, which brings us to the Defender. The Defender, 16 gold. Right? If we look at, I want to talk a little bit about resources. These guys, 30 resources, 30 recruitment points, 26 gold. These guys, similar in recruitment points, about probably 25% less resources and recruitment points, but way less gold. These guys also have Defender or Castle Defense bonus 2. Compare that to the knight, way more resources, right? So you're going to, especially at the beginning, until you get your cap circle cleared, you're not going to be able to get a lot of knights. But heavy cav expansion is always a thing. Heavy cav can always expand pretty well. And this is no exception. It is a little harder in the late age with them, just with crossbows everywhere. The defender is pretty notable for a few reasons. One is it's a crossbowman with a big friggin' shield. And a good shield, a kite shield. This guy will trade arrow fire with anyone. Anyone. I mean, he's just a beast when it comes to trading archer fire. Like arrow fire. Crossbows, normal arrows, doesn't matter. He will trade with anybody in the entire game, I think. Like, middle-aged golem, arbalist, don't care. He'll trade crossbows, I'm pretty sure, better than almost anybody except maybe the tower guard, which also is our own unit. Yeah, that's kind of his thing. But that's not his only thing. His other thing is he's got 15 defense. So in melee, most people are going to hit his shield, and he has 16 protection. And he's not carrying like a dagger, he's carrying a broadsword. And his attack doesn't suck like most archers' attacks suck. His attack is good. It's 12 and then +1 from the broadsword. What does this mean? It means things when they finally close in melee with this dude after getting picked apart by the crossbow are going to get the shit smacked out of them. This is a very serious attack. And with this high of protection, this high of defense, like, we're not going to get hit very hard or often. So an absolute unit. He has a little brother, and his little brother is the tower guard. The tower guard, cheaper, so if we just care about getting arrows in the air, he's 4 gold cheaper, which is a significant amount cheaper in terms of upkeep and all this. And his crossbow is the same. It's the same 11 damage crossbow. Nothing different. He may have a little bit of he has a tiny precision malice. Okay, the other guy's 12 precision, and this guy's 12, and the other guy's 11. But that's not that important. If you care about just number of arrows, like if you're just doing like trading archer fire, the protection difference, he's also got protection, I think a little bit less strength, a little less protection, a little less attack. If you just care about trading archer fire, this guy is going to outperform the defender because he's cheaper and you're going to have more bolts in the air, and that's going to matter a lot. Right, so as a crossbowman that is designed to trade with other ranged units, the tower guard is excellent. However, when he gets in melee, he's not going to hit as hard. The other guy had a 17 damage attack as often. The other guy had 13 attack. And when he gets hit, he's going to get hit a good bit harder since he has 3 less protection. Whereas it matters less because this kite shield, while it's good in melee, it's going to be even better against ranged stuff. So the fact that this guy has less protection is going to matter less in many archer scenarios. Okay, so that being said, the tower guard, pretty super solid. The other crossbow unit we have is the crossbowman. Now, you can see he has some basic armor, has no shield, but his resource cost is way down, and his gold cost is down from the tower guard. If you have guys we were not expecting to be in any significant contact with the enemy, right? Like, you know, you might have the occasional arrow coming in or something like that, but the enemy's not mounting major ranged attacks, and you're not expecting flyers or like super heavy flankers, you know, because maybe you have flanking screen set up or something like that. This guy is going to be your volume of fire for crossbow bolts. Right, he's going to be able to get out a lot of crossbow bolts, and he's cheap, and he has enough protection that like a faint wind won't blow him over. But not a super solid unit except for massing. We have more archers still. Coming down in the archer queue, we also have the longbowmen. Longbows are notable. This is a pretty high damage attack. 12 piercing damage. You notice that's more than your crossbow, right? So more damage, you're going to fire more frequently. Yeah, you're going to be firing basically every round till you clear out your ammo. And these are also really long range. So, all that said, longbowmen, pretty good, but In late age, a lot of units have really good armor. Like if you're fighting Micklin or something and you just need like volume of fire, these guys are going to be pretty solid. The other thing they're going to be solid against is, let's say you have Tower Guard up in the front, which are going to take a lot of the attention of, enemy archers if you're fighting a ranged group. And let's say you're fighting like late age Ulm, and they have a lot of crossbows, right? The Rangers of Ulm. The Longbowmen are going to be better at killing the Rangers of Ulm, who are very lightly armored, than your own crossbowmen. But they're not going to take hits very well. So if you position these guys far enough back and you have these guys on fire archer, they're going to do a pretty good job at picking apart enemy archers. Especially if you have kind of a critical mass of longbows. So these guys are pretty solid. They also have a short sword, which is not really very bad. So they'll run out of arrows reasonably quickly, then they'll run into melee and probably die, but yeah. If you want another ranged option, we have the light archer. The light archer now no longer has a short sword, it has more the crappy dagger we're used to. It costs 2 gold cheaper and has a short bow. And the short bow does noticeably less damage and fires at notably shorter range. So I would say the scenarios where you get a light archer are pretty far between. But if you just need volume of fire, like fighting chaff, that's probably the case you would get it. Like fighting chaff behind a screen, these guys are going to do pretty okay with that. But aside from that, I don't really think so. We have one more shortbow unit, and it's this guy, the Forester, who costs a fair amount, is stealthy, but also comes with a dagger and an axe. So he's got a few uses. One use is just for the dagger and the axe. If I think it's your only dual-wielding unit, so if you just need attack density, like you're fighting elves and you need to harass them down, this is a decent choice. Obviously, they're also going to be good at stealth raiding. And they have enough that, with the short bow, you can either have them charge in or you can have them do a short bow. Once something closes in with them, though, they're going to be pretty good in melee. The thing you want to be careful about is they're not going to trade very well with enemy archers. So, like, an ideal scenario for them is they shoot things close in, and then they hit them. You can also put these guys very far positioned at the front and do them on hold and attack. They'll do two volleys and then run forward. That might be a good formation for raiding PD. But these guys are solid. They also have the patrol bonus, so they're going to be pretty good at patrolling stuff down compared to other units per cost. Yeah, they're a solid unit. We probably won't be getting a ton of them, but it's going to depend what we're fighting. I can definitely imagine scenarios where we will get a lot of them. Like if we need to take out a bunch of elves, these guys are pretty good against elves. The reason is because the short bows can pierce a glamour, and then the elves aren't going to have a super great time once they close in melee with these dudes due to the attack density. So that's the Forester. We've gone through most of the ranged units now. The only ranged unit we haven't been through... Oh no, we've been through the Warden. Right, stealthy, same thing as the... what is this guy's called? The Lord Warden. Big friggin' great sword. Get him out of your capital. I dig them. Most notably, I think they're the hardest hitting unit you have on the roster. I think that's the big thing about these guys, aside from being sacred. But they hit really freaking hard. And I tell you what, it's one of the big checkboxes, in my opinion, for a nation, is do they have a unit which can hit really hard? Because if you don't have units which can hit really hard, you've got to have other ways of taking out really high protection stuff. And these guys are a really great way to take out really high protection stuff. Because you can have things which are high enough protection, they don't really care about crossbows. We have a few kind of medium or light infantry options. In general, I'm not a huge fan of these. But we have the 15 protection X-Men. Not bad, not horrible. We have the 11 protection X-Men. It's the same description. They hit pretty hard, 19 damage. We have a long spear. This, you could possibly consider expanding with these guys, especially until your cap circle's cleared and you have more resources. They're pretty cheap. And they're probably going to do okay, because they've got a shield and this long spear. I probably should test expansion with them. And we've got a Spearman. This guy, probably less of a fan, if I'm going to be totally honest. He does have 3 more defense than your other dude. And the Spearmen aren't bad, and you get them in your starting army, but they do kind of melt. Yeah, I'm not sure. The nice thing about the long spear is you're not going to get repelled, and you're going to repel the enemy some, which is going to make up for the fact that your defense is hot garbage. So, guys, that's the unit roster. We've been through both of them. But now we want to talk about how the nation plays. How does the nation play? This is like, in some ways, this is kind of like the dwarves or something in Warhammer. Right? They have it's basically like this artillery faction. You just sit there and you nuke the shit out of people from way far away, and it's kind of fun. Especially if you have your Magister's Arcane dropping Thunderstrike and stuff. I mean, God, they can just unleash an absolute hurt. You also have some of the major tools to be an air superpower. In fact, you have all the tools. Some of the tools are easier done than others, but you have Wind Guide, right? Which is a huge thing. You can do Wind Guide just trivially, right? You also have Strength of Giants, which is really nice. You also have Legions of Steel. All these things are really nice for like archery fire, getting that protection up. You know, the Strength of Giants is going to give you about +1 strength at least, depending on what your current strength is on your archery damage, which is nice. It's also going to help when people close in. It's going to be some of like our early research targets, is getting both those Strength of Giants and Legions of Steel. So we've got that. We also have enough fire access. It's not great, but we have enough fire access for it to be sort of trivial for us to do flaming arrows in all of our important fights. And that's pretty darn important. So we have kind of the trifecta in terms of paths for archery. We have air, fire, and earth. And yeah, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal. The main vulnerability I think the nation has is we have no nature mages and we're a scales nation, so we have to deal with foul vapors. We have some of the most powerful mage artillery in the game about. I mean, just between Gifts of Heaven and Thunderstrike, I mean, we can just do and like Soul Slay stuff. We can just unleash an absolute hurting on people. Yeah, an absolute hurting. So I think that's kind of the 4-1-1 for the nation. It plays pretty straightforward. There's not, aside from the Warden stealth rating, there's some interesting strats we can do with like Bows of War on this guy, and you can potentially do Weapon Blesses and then put it on the Bow of War. We're not going to do that. We're going to stack Strength probably one way or another, which is going to help these guys eliminate high value targets in melee. It's also going to help a bit with the crossbow shots that our Sacreds get. It's also going to help a bit with Bow of War. So we've got stealthy options, but the main thing, like when you fight, that's kind of the downside, is like there's not a ton of versatility with man. Like when you fight them, they're going to be in battle stations and just like lobbing things at you. The nations we have in the game, though, there's not a ton with great air access. There are some, but there's not a ton of great air access, which means we'll probably have an okay time of the mid-game before the anti-archery stuff comes up. But I think that's something for us to think about, is we're a nation with we've got a little bit of a tricky early game, because expansion is tough, especially if we do scales. It's not hard, but it's not like lightning fast. And some of the nations in our game are probably going to have lightning fast expansion. And we could always mess it up. And if you mess up scales, you're in a bit of trouble. So yeah, we don't have a great nation for... Like our super early game's tricky, but early mid game is good. We've got really solid units, which is when those matter. Or late early game, however you want to call it. Our mid-game is super duper good. In fact, I think we're probably one of the stronger mid-game nations. Late game for us is tricky. It's tricky. Relying on the same things we did in mid-game probably won't work. We're going to have to pull out some other things. We're going to have to figure some stuff out. and we're gonna have a lot of problems with the. We have to, if we don't make hay in the mid game, we're gonna be in trouble by the late game, especially in this particular game, because there's a lot of blood powers. So we'll see how it goes, but that is basically, man, they do a few things very, very well. But they do have special tools, especially if you use Wardens correctly, to kind of deal with most scenarios in the early game. Except Foul Vapors. And Foul Vapors is going to be the big thing we have to worry about. But I think that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the National Overview. It was short and sweet. I will see you next time.